And I'm so proud of you guys. So up next, we're going to have aging, and we are going to have aging being presented to us by Abdul Salam and Dong Han Yi. So are you guys ready to present on aging?
Yes.
Okay, guys, so the floor is yours.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So today we're gonna learn about aging. And scientists have been searching for a cure for aging for many years. Many different investors donated funding to this research, and they have not found a defined answer. So, theoretically speaking, if the human body never gets an illness or a disease or injured, shouldn't it be able to live eternally? Each cell should be working properly, doing their jobs. If there aren't any outside factor, what makes the body die? Yeah, what is aging? At the biological level, aging results from the impact of accumulated molecular and cellular damage over time. This leads to gradual decrease in physical and mental capacity, growing risk of disease, and ultimately death. All cells experience changes with aging. They become larger and are less able to divide and multiply. Connective tissue changes, becoming more stiff. This makes the organs, blood vessels, and airways more rigid, and many tissues lose mass. This process is called atrophy. Some tissues become lumpy or more rigid. No one knows how and why people change as they get older. Some theories claim that aging is caused by injuries from ultraviolet light over time, wear and tear on the body, or by products of metabolism. Other theories view aging as a predetermined process controlled by genes. Yeah, the immune system is related to aging. Then one of most recognized consequences of aging is the decline in immune function. This is proven by increased vulnerability of people 70 years of age and older to many different diseases and illnesses. The white blood cells can respond to newer antigens or in short supply. As a result, when an older person comes into contact with a new antigen, their body are less able to defend against it, and the immune system loses its ability and differentiate between self and non ability to differentiate between self and non-self. As a result, autoimmune, which means immune system attacks its self body, diseases increase. And T cells, which remember antigens they've seen before, react more slowly to the antigens. Yeah. Cancer and DNA methylation. We develop precancerous cells our whole life, but when we are young, our immune system is very strong and it is able to target those precancerous cells and kill them, so prevent the cancer. But with aging, our immune system weakens and it may fail to target some and find some precancerous cells. So how DNA methylation is involved by this? Think of methylation is a dust settling on the switch, which they prevents the cell from tuning on certain genes. If a cell can no longer turn on critical developmental genes, it might be easier for it to become a cancer cell. Researchers were surprised to find that 70 to 90% of cancer patients considered old showed significantly increased methylation in all seven cancer types. This suggests that age-related methylation may be disable the expression of certain genes, make it easier for cells to transition to cancer. Yeah, and then aging related to Alzheimer's disease. The most important risk factor for Alzheimer's disease is getting older. After the age of 65, the chance of developing dementia doubles every 5 years, which an estimated 30% of those aged 85 often suffering from it. Scientists identify changes in the brain that lead to increased risk, and they center around a protein called amyloid beta. Normally, this protein is cleared from the brain before it can clump together into plaques. Younger people can clear these plaques about 4 hours, um, but older people take longer than 10 hours to clear this beta amyloid. So, it can increase the chances that it will clump together to form Alzheimer's plaques. Genome-wide association studies have been made of people who survive from beyond to age of the 90 or 99th percentile compared with people whose age only survive from the 60th percentile. What they found is that the APOE4 gene was associated with the lower chances of surviving to reach the 90 99th percentile, while APOE2 gene was the complete opposite. Even GWAS were made of these genes showing a relation to severe COVID-19 as well. So this graph shows that people have APOE4 genes is shorter than people who have APOE2 and 2 genes, and this chart shows that the people who have APOE4 genes have more risk to Alzheimer's disease than people who have APOE2 genes. And cellular aging. A cell can replicate only about 50 times because of the genetic material which called telomere is no longer able to be genetic genetic material is no longer able to be copied accurately. So the DNA becomes shorter when it began copying, and the replication failure is referred as cellular senescence, during which the cell loses its functional characteristics. The accumulation of senescent cells is the hallmark of the cellular aging, which in turn translates to biological aging. So how might mitochondria be involved in aging? As you might know, the mitochondria is responsible for the production of energy for the cell. As the human body ages, the mitochondria ages as well, losing some of its efficiency to produce energy for the cell. If the cell doesn't receive enough energy to keep it functioning properly, it could lead to many different problems. While all studies are not in complete concordance, the majority of reports have found that aging is generally accompanied by a decline in activity of mitochondrial enzymes. So the mitochondria mean, so that means mitochondria, older mitochondria is not less efficient because of its mitochondrial enzymes is declining. So this is the end of my part.
I could take it from here. So, NAD plus or nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, it's a coenzyme central to metabolism. So NAD plus not only helps convert food to energy, but also plays a crucial role in maintaining DNA integrity. So NAD plus ensures the functioning of our defensive genes to help the body and protects us from aging and disease. It's used in citric acid cycle. It helps repair damaged DNA by something called ADP ribosylation, and the concentration of NAD plus decreases as aging progresses. Oh, Donghoon isn't here. Oh wait, can you go to the next slide, please? My bad. Okay. Sirtuins. Sirtuins are a family of 7 proteins that play a role in cellular health. Sirtuins can only function in the presence of NAD+, which is the coenzyme that I mentioned earlier. Sirtuins appear to have regulatory effects in most systems of the body, like the brain and nerves, metabolism, heart and blood vessels, and immune system, just to name a few. Of the 7 sirtuins in the cell, 3 of them work in the mitochondria, 3 of them work in the nucleus, and 1 of them works in the cytoplasm, each playing a variety of roles, though they have small differences. So, but the basic role of sirtuins is that they remove acetyl groups from other proteins, affecting the protein's ability to bind to other proteins or DNA. Can you go to the next slide? So how are sirtuins and NAD+ related to aging? Sirtuins are proteins that tell the cells what to do, basically, while NAD+ is needed to keep the sirtuins functional. So unfortunately, NAD+ levels steadily decline during aging. By the time a human is middle-aged, levels of NAD+ have fallen to half of youthful levels, with the resulting loss of sirtuin activity. As sirtuin activity decreases, the communication between the nucleus and the mitochondria gets affected as well, making the cell possibly less efficient. So what is a longevity gene? As humans and other mammals grow older, their DNA is increasingly prone to breaks, which can lead to gene rearrangements and mutations, which are the hallmarks of cancer and aging. So the SIRT6 gene is often called the longevity gene because of its important role in organizing proteins and recruiting enzymes that repair broken DNA. So although many scientists are researching this topic, there is no defined answer as to how we could use this gene to prolong our own lives. So there are two theories around metabolism. They kind of go hand in hand together, but the rate of living theory arose from the observation that larger animal species tend to have longer lifespans than small ones. One way to explain this observation is through the concept of metabolic rate, which is the rate of how the organism converts food to energy. Since larger animals have also been observed to have lower metabolic rates, this theory suggests that slower metabolic rates are associated with longer lifespans. And then the free radical theory. Wait, can you go back? Right. The free radical theory provides a potential explanation for the rate of living theory. Under this theory, aging is a result of the cells in the body accumulating damage over time. This damage comes from so-called free radicals, which are highly reactive molecules naturally produced by our bodies. Because the free radicals are created by our own metabolic processes, slower metabolism could decrease the rate of free radical production and therefore extend lifespans. Right. So calorie restriction enters this equation because it's known that drastically reducing food intake will reduce metabolic rate. So if less food is being consumed, then there's less food that the body has to process. Moreover, since calories restriction generally results in weight loss, less energy overall is needed to maintain the reduced body mass. So as a result of this reduction of metabolic rate, it is hypothesized that calorie restriction could extend lifespans by decreasing the rate of free radical damage. This suggests that calorie restriction slows down the aging process, allowing the organism to live longer and with less risk of age-related diseases. So is there a cure to aging? The short answer is no, not yet. There is no cure that could lead to all the issues of solving aging. But I do believe that aging by itself isn't a fixed process. I think that it can be somehow manipulated for better or worse in the future. Recently, scientists found that many different drugs and mutations that when used on mice, yeast, or even worms did prolong their lives. The only problem is that testing them on more complicated organisms could lead to unprecedented results. So no one's willing to take that research any further. Fortunately, I mean, there are more natural ways to prolong our lives. Good habits like daily exercise, a balanced diet, and a good sleep schedule are proven for a healthier life. That was our presentation. Thank you everyone for listening.
That was really awesome. Thank you for touching on those topics related to aging. Does anybody have questions to ask them? One of the risk factors for longevity or living long in a genome-wide study also included that APO is one of those genes that could predict lifespan as well. And what we are also observing, so this was a recent article that I came upon as well. Severe COVID-19 and Alzheimer's disease, ApoE4 is fault again. So in a longevity, a genome-wide association study, it was found that ApoE4, that version is increased with a shortened lifespan, and the E2 version is associated with living longer. So what they find is that there have been problems with patients with Alzheimer's disease in the COVID-19 pandemic, and given a high infection and mortality rate of COVID-19 in these patients. So we're trying to identify risks, biomarkers for more effective healthcare, looking at the AD-related gene APO. And ApoE4 gives a high rate of infectivity from SARS-CoV-2 and genetically is associated with severe COVID-19. It connects APO with risk factors like ACE2. These are other like genes that are proteins that allow the virus to enter into the protein. ApoE4 associated dementia may increase the exposure to coronavirus infection, which causes COVID-19. So people are trying to investigate why is this associated with more severe COVID-19. And people are finding evidence for ApoE4 involvement in making you more vulnerable for COVID-19. It increases your risk of Alzheimer's disease by 15 times and your risk of having severe COVID by 2 times. So what you can see is that there are all these different proteins here. And as Abdul Salam and Dong Hoon mentioned, that you can see here that this is a SIRT1 gene here that you guys were talking about, and this is APO, and this is a network, and all that's showing is how genes interact with each other here. So ApoE4, behavioral and molecular exposure can impact, peripheral and brain vulnerability to COVID-19, can result potentially in multi-organ damage of COVID-19 in patients with Alzheimer's disease. Perhaps this could also, who knows, explain, because these are huge risk factors, or these are associated, ApoE4, with aging as well, with longevity, how long you tend to live. So perhaps these could explain the connections, because of these SIRT1 genes, as Abdul Salam and Dong Hoon were mentioning, have been associated with aging and longevity. So this is just a pathway of how a gene can interact, activate, or inhibit, or be a transcript, or some of them are transcription factors, so they help transcribe other genes. So these, when they become proteins, they help with the transcription of certain genes to messenger RNA. So I thought that this would be a cool connection as to how APO, which is associated with E4, has lesser survival time and shorter lifespan than people with the E2 version of this gene, but it connects also with the SIRT1 gene. And ultimately this ACE2, which has these receptors on membranes of various cells that the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2 recognizes and uses to come into the cell. So this is all very, very interconnected. So I thought you guys did a really, really great job. Actually, I'll just probably very quickly show you guys an example of what that looks like. I think it's just loading. 1 second. Okay, here it is. So you can see here that when the spike protein binds to the ACE2 receptors, it then is able to enter into the cell. So there are all these proteins, all these factors, and now you guys probably know that these are histone proteins as well. These are transcription factors that are helping transcribe this gene, this part of the DNA, into a protein that has different functions. So I thought that's super cool. This is just a paper that came out recently. And now you guys kind of have some idea. You guys have looked at some pretty advanced papers, and you guys are doing a really, really good job so far as well. So does anybody have any questions for Dong Hoon and Abdul Salam? Any questions for them? And again, like it's a huge question. If you can find the antidote that makes people live longer, and who knows, right? Like you guys could do really phenomenally well if you can find those antidotes. So up next we have